Welcome to Bourbon, Beer, and Books. This is a new episode. We are fresh here with, we got Sean remotely here. Season 2. And in the studio, we almost went black, but we have Kase Johnstun and Dorie. This month's book, we're going to get to what Dorie's drinking over there. But Sean, will you just introduce the book real quick?
Yes. Okay. So we're coming back for season 2, and we're like, what should we read? And try not to get overtly political, but we are reading J.D. Vance, the new vice presidential pick for Trump. Wrote a book called Hillbilly Elegy about his life as a hillbilly.
As a hillbilly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just want to say that before we really get into the book, trying to read it as though without the lens of the political divide of our country, and just try to look at the book. I failed at doing that, but I tried.
I'm glad you tried. I will say I'm Brandon. I'm the producer. I'll introduce myself. Bourbon, Beer, and Books, along with other podcasts like Van Sessions, Ogden Arts and Adventure Show here at the Banyan Collective. And proud to be here, and I love what you guys do. And I did not read the book, so I'll be a sideline observer for this episode.
But he's jumping in with the bourbon and the beer, though. So
yes,
that's the most important part.
Yeah. I am a producer who believes in immersing myself with the guests and taking part in the bourbon and the beer portion of what we are doing. So, which is very important.
You're a brave, courageous soul.
I appreciate that.
He is.
Yeah.
Dorie, so you read the book, Dorie. You read
I listened to it.
Okay. Yeah, we got 2 audiobook listeners over here, and you decided to go with...
I wanted to go... I thought long and hard about what to drink, and I wanted to represent JD's full geographic evolution. We're starting from the holler with Kentucky Bourbon, Maker's Mark, ending up at the Hill, Capitol Hill.
Oh,
with
snap.
Proper Brewing Company's Yacht Rock juice box, because you know those Yale boys, they like yacht with their boat slippers.
Oh.
Listening to Yacht Rock.
Yeah. I'm going to offend the Yaleys at least twice tonight.
From the holler to the hill, baby.
That's what I do on the weekends.
Yeah.
So that's
I do that every day.
I cannot stand Yaleys.
I don't know one Yale. Do you know any Yaley?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wish I could say I knew some. I don't know any.
Yeah, they're all the same.
Well, Case.
I don't like to stereotype, but.
Right. But they're all the same. Do you have any picks this evening for your bourbon and beer?
No, I'm going with Dorie's pick.
Okay, but your shirt is amazing. Can you show your shirt off for those? Yeah,
I got my Bourbon, Beer, and Book shirt on. I love it.
Very nice.
We need to have more.
Love it. We gotta get some more of those out.
So I'm doing the Maker's Mark with Dorie, and then I'm drinking a Good Company hard seltzer because I'm in good company.
Oh, that's adorable.
That's sweet.
Yeah, are we doing our overall view of the book yet, Sean?
Well, what's Sean drinking?
Sean's drinking.
So I'm out here in Astoria, Oregon. You guys are all in Ogden, but I thought long and hard about what I'm going to drink when we're discussing this book, and the first thing that came to mind is Kool-Aid, because obviously he drank some because the guy who wrote this book, who is a never Trumper, who praises Obama, says birtherism is bullshit.
Yeah, he did.
How is he the VP now for Trump? I don't know.
Yeah.
But since
more to come,
I didn't go with Kool-Aid. It's bourbon and beer. I went with this ale song. It's a small brewery in Eugene, Oregon. It's Imperial Stout aged in Kentucky bourbon barrels.
Nice.
And fun fact, the barrels actually spent longer in Kentucky than J.D. Vance did. That's entire life.
It's true.
It's
and I think
these guys, the Ale Song Brewery, they specialize in oak aged beers and barrels, and it's just so good. It's like drinking just like liquid, like velvet. It's so nice.
Sean, can you hand some over to us here through the inner?
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds very good.
This is like candy. It's like liquid candy, man.
That sounds delicious.
And then with the bourbon, I just, not some hillbilly put in his back pocket, like my dad.
Did you buy that at 7-Eleven?
In Oregon. Yeah.
And then I bought an extra one for the kids out front. And
always buy 2. Cheers.
Cheers.
smells just like rubbing alcohol. Love it.
This is season 2 of Bourbon, Beer, and Books. So welcome, a podcast where we drink and then some of our favorite local beverages and talk about books. And I leave it up to Sean, the readers, the actual authors, to choose the books. I'm just here to press record and enjoy what y'all have to say this evening. So, Sean, do you want to break down the book or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love to. Thanks. But before I do that, I do have an alternate beer just in case.
Alternate
it's Black Raven Brewing. It's called Alternate Dimensions. Because
shout out to brewers and the names of their beers these days. They are killing it. That's awesome.
I have an alternate beer as well. It's
the ultimate dimension.
An all-American.
I felt like I was in an alternate dimension with this book.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I did. Yeah.
So this was written. How long ago was it written?
I think it was 9 years ago.
Yeah.
9 years ago.
16. 13.
Turned into a
15,
Netflix
16.
movie.
Which I have to say,
didn't watch.
I accidentally watched that because I like Glenn Close. I think she's great, and I watched it like 2 years ago. And this is rare, but the movie was a lot better than the book.
Yeah.
It was actually
Number one, I didn't have to hear his voice.
yeah, it was actually good. Well, Glenn Close is just good.
Well,
so it's like
she knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, she was really good. But
Who else was in the movie?
Amy Adams
Yeah.
plays his mom.
Amy Adams plays his mom.
Okay.
It was. I didn't even know who he was when I watched it. It was like during the pandemic or something, I think.
It was pre.
So I'm going to just
presidential
try to give a
VP.
summary of what you guys kind of add on to where you thought. Usually when we were talking about the story and the characters and the plot, theme even, definitely the setting, it's just a long essay. There's no dialogue. There's no tension. There's no, there's no story. I wouldn't even say it's a memoir. To me, a memoir is a certain amount of years in your life where there's a change in who the main character being yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And, you learn something. This guy, he comes out the gate like he knows everything about poverty in Appalachia. And I'm really surprised after I finished the book, looking back, he wasn't born near the Appalachia, unless it's the other end, Ohio. I don't know. He was born in Middleton, Ohio, but he talks about he went to go visit the holler, and all of a sudden he's a hillbilly. And my great grandfather was from Scotland. I might wear a kilt sometimes, but I'm not saying that I'm Scottish. My grandfather on the other side was a coal miner in Pennsylvania. I don't know anything about that.
I bet our grandparents knew each other. Mine was also a coal miner in Pennsylvania. So yes,
They must have known.
they all knew each other, right? Yeah.
I just don't. I don't get how he has such confidence in speaking for a population he was so obviously not a part of.
Well, the title alone is misleading.
But
Yeah.
to summarize it all, he grows up in a upper middle class. He says in there that they made $100,000 a year. That was a lot of money for their, that was at the late 80s, 90s. And then he joins the Marines after high school,
which he doesn't talk about
college. I guess he's the first person in his family to go to college and get a degree. And then he goes and he gets into Yale Law School. And his mother, the whole book is fighting addiction with, at the end, it was heroin, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was able to help, he puts her in a cheap hotel surrounded by heroin users. And I didn't understand that either.
And spiders.
So I don't know. Did I miss anything, guys?
That's about it.
That's about it. And I feel like just adding on to what you said, let's take it from like a literature perspective, and then as an angry perspective.
Well, can I mention really fast though, Kase, you used to write or focus and teach on sort of what Sean said the style of this book.
Oh,
right?
I've been teaching memoir. Sean's been teaching memoir, I don't know, a decade at least, both of us.
So you guys know, you do have an opinion on this.
Sure, yeah. I mean, in both of us, we both have
my first book was a memoir.
Yeah.
I would teach memoir in school, in college as well.
And this was, this felt to me like a summary. It just felt like a really long summary. And then he would analyze things. It was a cultural, social, economical analysis from an amateur who doesn't know what they're doing. And it just felt like we always, you hear the adage just from like a writing perspective that you show versus tell. But at the same time, real writers, like, we know you have to do both. You have to tell, you have to move stuff along, you have to show. If anybody ever tells you, only show and don't tell, then they're wrong. You have to use both. But this felt like the entire book was just a tell. He was just like, well, and then I summarize this, and then I'm going to tell you how I feel about poverty and my family. And it felt like every chapter, went back to it.
That first chapter where he's working in the warehouse, and he's talking about some guy taking 40-minute bathroom breaks, and the disgust that he feels for poor people comes through the pages without him really saying it, Yeah. But it really did feel like if they just work harder, they can get out of poverty.
Oh, yeah, that's
and it's their fault that they're poor. And I just, I wrote it down. I was trying to figure out what I thought about this thing. Is you could tell that he's upset that the poor people don't feel shame equal to the disgust that he feels for them. And I think that's just horrible.
Yeah, Dorie, what were you thinking as an overall?
I think Sean nailed it. He is, it was boring.
It was boring.
Summary.
It was a boring summary.
And he's just came across as a know-it-all, arrogant. He knows more than anybody else. And he has a disgust for poor people, and he's not like that. He had help, but the way he carried on, I wasn't a fan of his work.
What did Netflix see in this? Why did they?
Okay, so let's go back to that. Let's
go back before Netflix. I mean, why did this get a bestseller?
Why does this get a contract? And Sean and I, we can totally what the hell, man? It's like, first off, it's the writing's poor. I mean, it's not poor in a way that, the guy can craft a sentence. There's nothing, but it's boring. There's no scene. There's no, every chapter doesn't move anything forward. He does exactly what we tell our memoirists not to do. He actually did literally start before he was born in the book and talk about, and then when he was born, and then he went till he was 31, which when he published the book. That's like the last thing you ever do is go with memoir. But the thing is how did he get a contract? And I think that's what Sean was alluding to is how did he get a contract? Did he just have a great title? And then, and then some editor's like, oh yeah, that's interesting because nobody's really doing this. I don't know, maybe.
Going off of what you're saying, Kase, the only thing I could see why they picked it up is because I read a review from New York Times, and they're trying to say he cracked the code. He figured out why people are voting for Trump because they're alienated, they're disenfranchised from the system, and they're poor and they're in survival mode. They're easily manipulated when somebody comes out, but that's what I don't understand, and maybe I'm not meant to understand it, but Trump was able to convince everybody that they should buck against a system that he is directly benefiting from behind their backs, what the hell, man?
Yeah. I mean, if you would have read this, you would think this guy, he's kind of even though he's pompous and a know-it-all and all of those things, he praises Obama. He does, he praises Bush too. To be fair, he praised Bush. Yeah. He praised, he was like, and in the end, he was like, we need to not pin it on them. That was the end of the book. He's like, we can't pin what happens poorly on Bush or Obama. And this was published before the Trump years, but it was he was pretty, I can give him that. He was pretty kind of balanced that way. He was like, as poor people or whoever we are, we can't pin it on them. And that's the mistake that a lot of people do, but yeah, I don't even know where I was going with that.
Maybe
I don't know, man.
he had a friend at the publishing company.
Yeah,
He went
I know.
to Yale.
Well, he went to Yale, and he
That's
even
a big
says that in the
deal,
book.
'cause you know people. It's all who you know.
It's
and
all who you
connections
know.
and
It was a
stuff.
yacht. It was a yacht meeting.
It was a yacht meeting.
and
Thank
then
you.
they talked
Yeah.
about this book, and they
Mhm.
were like,
I was
like,
there actually. Yeah.
guys.
I
this
actually
is the
probably
book.
do. I probably believe that's probably the closest to the truth.
That can be the only possible reason.
Yeah. Because and then this is where it gets mad. I mean, I can say this very clearly. Sean's a great writer. I'm a decent writer. This guy's like, this is crap. And somebody, I'm more mad that he got a book
It's
contract.
amateur hour.
You know,
It
that he
is
got a book
amateur
contract and is rich because of it. I'm more mad at that than anything else, you know, because it's like, it was boring. It was boring. I had it at 2.0%.
It's boring, but I mean, I can see he's intelligent, you know, and so I'm looking at this book.
He is smart. Yeah.
A book about a guy supposedly grew up in poverty. A book about a guy who his mother has addiction issues and moves around. The father abandoned him. He goes to school and people, I don't know if he was alienated that way. I guess he's an outsider. But, and, you know, he fights through it and he joins the military and then he makes good. And for me, I'm like, I want that. I want that story out there because it's my story too. You know, it's somebody I can relate to.
Right.
I grew up with parents who had struggled with addiction issues, and dad took off, and mom had a bunch of boyfriends, and it's the same type of thing. But so I'm like, all right, I want this, and I want somebody who looks like me to represent me when they go to the White House. But there's something about the way he writes this book that I don't like the guy.
I think that
I think
Dorie
He's unlikable. He's an unlikable person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
He
But why do you say that? I mean, do you remember anything in here?
Okay, one of the things I remember is in the chapter 6, I don't remember, when he's talking about when he's meeting up with his biological father and he lives with him for a little while, and he wants his father's approval. I understand that.
Oh yeah, totally.
And you do what your father does. You like what your father likes, and so he joined that church. I don't know what church it was that his father's in, but it was really intense. And
the church that hated Led Zeppelin.
The church that, number one, I don't like the church that hated Led Zeppelin. Go straight to hell right there. Okay. Number two, he says, this church, they have these crazy ideas and they believe in these crazy theories. And he got to the point where when he was, I don't know, how old was he, did he say, when he lived with his father, his biological father?
Like 14 or 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at this time, he's a 14, 15-year-old boy. And maybe this is just being a 14, 15-year-old boy. You're a dumbass. Sorry.
Yeah, we are.
And he was fighting online with scientists about evolution. And I'm like, because you know more than a scientist.
Yeah.
Eat shit,
like,
JD. Come on.
Yeah, he was like, I fell into this thing.
And
where I'm an evolutionist, and I was, I was like,
and I think, oh my God.
But he isn't. That's the thing. Well, that's probably his age, but
yeah. And I think, okay, he's a teenager, but why is this infuriating me?
And why is it in the book?
There's other instances in the book, I can't remember right now, where he's challenging people, studied and learned people who are like, I know about this. This is my field. And he comes in, I know more than you.
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Just shut your mouth.
Yeah.
I just don't like him.
You know who I loved? Okay, I loved his grandma. His grandma was my grandma. Like, swore like
Mima.
Mima. Swore like a sailor.
Mama.
Big middle finger to everything, to every institution. She didn't like Catholicism. She didn't like churches. She didn't like government. She was just like a big middle finger.
Mama
was, I love her.
Mama was the MVP in this story. Mama kept me hanging on when I wanted to give up. That Mama was a badass bitch.
She was.
Let me tell you. And I read it, and she's my mom.
Yeah.
My mom is Mama.
Yeah. Right. 100%. And I loved her.
My grandma Betty was same thing.
Yeah.
Cuss like a sailor.
Cuss like a sailor.
Yeah.
She'll cut a bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
exactly.
My family. I'm going to mess with you. I'm going to have my sons go over there and mess you up if you mess with my family.
Yeah, I loved her.
That's why I should have liked this book.
She's the only reason I got through it.
The truth is, and if we look at it honestly as a memoir, she is the reason he is the VP.
She was his
candidate
North
right
Star.
now. She took care of everybody. She made sure everything was okay.
Oh, the irony! The father, the What was the grandfather's
Papa.
name?
Papa.
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 Well,
Yeah.
we'll get into that in a second. If you say what you got to say, Sean, I got to go. Yeah, go.
I was just saying that he had a union job. That's the only reason
yeah.
that he made $100,000, and he's so anti-union.
And he said he voted for Reagan once, but beyond that, he voted Democrat.
He hated that son of a bitch Mondale.
Yeah, he hated Mondale. That was the only reason he voted for Reagan.
Yeah.
I wrote this quote down when I read it in chapter 6. It says, "Unless you're a particular capable sociopath, dishonesty will only take you so far."
Yes.
So, like, is he just so out of oblivious to his own words? I mean, where's he? Look where he's at right now.
Well, like we said, parallel universe.
Yeah, because this guy in this book, he was not.
He's all over the place.
He's not. Well, he wasn't MAGA. That's for sure.
No, he's not MAGA.
No, he's not MAGA.
Well, it was before MAGA.
Right, it was before, but I don't think he really is. Oh, Sean, so you brought up like Mama, Papa. This was fun for me in a lot of ways because there was multiple times he's like, hillbillies say this, and he's like, something like, you're too big for your britches. I'm like, everybody fucking says that.
Yeah, no shit.
He did that like 10 times in the book. He's like, hillbillies say.
Because he doesn't know what being a hillbilly is.
Yeah,
Because he's not.
Yeah, and I was like, hillbillies
It's like a whole other states away from where he grew up.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm convinced he brought in that Appalachia hillbilly culture because
That
his
sold the
life is
book.
boring,
Yeah, that
and
sold
that
the
gave it that extra flair, that spice,
It did.
that hillbilliness.
Hillbilliness.
That's why he brought it in.
Oh, that's what sold the book.
I know.
The book, the title.
Everyone loves
he's-
a good hillbilly.
Everybody, yeah, he's like, hillbillies say,
Yeah,
I don't
the
know. It
first
could be
two
anything.
the hillbilly lore.
Yeah.
People want to read it.
I mean, the first 2 chapters, like, I didn't do anything special. People might say that, but it really didn't do anything too special. And I'm kind of an outsider for Appalachia and hillbillies.
Yeah.
That's first. And then the rest of the book, he's like, what I did is super special, and I'm a hillbilly.
Yeah.
Hillbillies like me and stuff like that, completely contradicts the first 2 chapters that he kind of set up. That he's not all of this stuff, and then we're supposed to forget about it. Then if you bring it up, I guess, him as the writer, like, well, I said I was not born there. I said I didn't.
He did, yeah. I mean, and we're not talking about the current news cycle, but people are saying, well, he's not really a hillbilly. He's not from Appalachia. The book doesn't say he is. He never really, he doesn't. And
really I said
pretend.
that you're trying to defend him, but I did catch a couple of times where he said hillbillies like me. And
hillbillies like, no, hillbillies say, the early bird gets the worm. You're like, I swear, hillbillies say you can pull yourself up by your bootstrap. I'm like, everybody fucking says that. That was the part where I was
mountains, in Central Oregon with a bunch of loggers, and then we lost the timber industry went away because of the spotted owl. Same thing. It was just like what he's describing in his mythology that he builds with his uncle's stories.
Right.
That's what it was like for me too, but he like almost breaks his shoulder trying to pat himself on the back on some of these things. And
well, like you said, Sean,
so fake, but I think it's only fake to people who don't really know what it's like. I think people who have no clue what it's like to live in poverty in a rural area, people who don't know about it will believe what he's saying.
Yeah. I have a question.
Yeah.
Because I'm on the outside and I don't know what the hell's going on. Is this a story written by someone who, ends up at Yale?
Yeah, he's a Yale.
Ends up successful. And so there's some guilt and he tries to be cool and tells the story about where he grew up from, but he doesn't really nail it. Is that what you're trying to
I don't think this man has any guilt.
Yeah, no. I think this book is billed as like this is the American dream, which is cool.
Yeah, yes.
And like Sean was saying earlier, we would want to cheer for this guy. Somebody who grows up with his parents are his mom has addiction, he's poor, gets in the military, which he doesn't talk about at all. Like he doesn't talk about his 4 years in the Marines.
It's like a chapter.
It's like, even
chapter 10, but he only talks about it for a couple pages.
And I'm like, that's stuff that would be pretty interesting.
Well, he's mentioned it at every stump speech since he's become VP.
Well, of course.
Well, and so
he wants
it's like,
vote, Sean.
This is somebody that we would want to elevate to be a vice presidential candidate.
Yeah, you picked yourself up from the bootstraps.
Only hillbillies say that. You've never heard that before.
I know. I can't. I'm from Texas. I'm not a hillbilly.
Yeah, you've never heard bootstraps.
I know. I'm not a hillbilly.
Hillbillies invented bootstraps.
We, hillbillies put syrup on their pancakes.
Syrup. Syrup. They put syrup.
Yeah, they put syrup on their pancakes. Nobody else does. So if you don't know hillbilly culture, we put syrup on our pancakes. Anyways.
But it didn't seem like that to me. To me, this sounded, instead of a memoir, this was more of hey, I figured out poverty, guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
Read my book.
Right.
I have all the answers here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all you have to do is feel really bad about being poor, and that'll make you work harder.
And his answers were this, which is, if you're on food stamps, if you're on any kind of assistance, you're bad. that was kind of it. Like, here's the answer. Yeah.
And once again, like Sean says, he's patting himself on the back and he's coming in like he knows more than everyone. Like he knows more than, socioeconomics is now his expertise. And so he knows everything about it.
Mm-hmm.
He knows everything about everything.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem. It's like, it was like, if you're on food, if you take any kind of government assistance,
right,
you are lazy.
Yes.
And he figured it out because he worked at a supermarket.
Right.
When he was a teenage boy.
Yeah.
T-bones with food stamps.
Right.
Holy shit. If you buy T-bones with poor people aren't allowed to have T-bone steaks.
Yeah.
Dude.
You get ground beef at best.
Oh yeah.
Or
right.
Steaks, and that's all you get as a poor person. The audacity.
And that's why he's an expert at economics because he had that stint at the grocery store.
That's like me saying I worked at Supersonic Car Wash for 5 years. I know everything about everything.
You can race
that
cars.
might be true.
That might be true. Actually.
I am going to say that.
I worked at Safeway. I was a night stalker while I was going to high school. So I mean, I know socioeconomic.
Where's your book on economics?
As well.
Come on.
He was waiting for me because I worked at Albertsons for 6 years and through freight, and so we're doing a joint.
I'm surrounded by experts.
I said it.
So that brings me back to the original question.
Sure.
If the book is so bad, why is there a movie? What did Netflix see in this? And,
I don't know.
Number one, I think they saw Ron Howard.
Oh, yeah.
Ron Howard read it. He loved it. He pitched it, and it's Ron Howard.
Yeah. I think they saw.
Little Opie has some.
Yeah.
So
pull
the
in
move
Hollywood.
then is for aspiring authors to just ship books to Ron Howard's house.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I've tried.
Ron Howard probably, like I said, I haven't watched the movie, but Ron Howard probably put like a human element into the
He did.
Into the story.
He did.
Mima was the major character.
Yeah.
She was honestly.
She made
Mima
it.
was Glenn Close, and they actually in the book they moved Mima back to Appalachia. Or I mean the movie. They moved Mima back to Appalachia and his family back to Appalachia. So they weren't like Ohio in the movie. They were actually...
No, they just visited.
In the
beginning, they're just visiting.
Right, and that's where he gets beat up.
Yeah, and the mom's like, why are we still here?
Right, and so he goes back to grandma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the movie, they focus more on Mama
and his relationship.
Yeah, and in the story, in the book, he really focuses, I love the men in my family, the men in my family.
It's really true. I didn't
But you know what?
Yeah.
It was the number one woman in your family.
Yeah.
Your mama, that was your North Star that took you and pushed you to be, to go to Yale, to be where you are today.
Yeah.
It wasn't the men in your family.
No, they were a bunch of jackasses.
And in the book,
Grandpa was okay.
Right, and in the book, he's like praising the men in the family.
Yeah. The movie
I
was...
read that book where the matriarch is the one pushing him the great things.
It was Mama.
This book was more like, Mama helped, but it was me. I did it.
Yeah.
Dude, it was Mama. I read between the lines. I read the book and then I saw the movie. It's Mama.
It's Mama.
Okay.
And the movie was all about Mama, and Glenn Close blew it out of the park. She was so good. And Amy Adams was actually really good.
She was really good.
As the mom.
In the movie, do they cover him going to Iraq?
No.
Briefly,
no.
if anything, nothing?
Barely.
Well, it's totally different too. It's like they took a lot. It's not the same.
No. They don't really do that.
It's not the same.
Just so chapter 10 is when he goes to the Marines, and that's he's like, I got to put off college. I'm not ready for it. I'm going to go to the Marines, figure out what I want.
Sure.
Great plan. He does it.
Right.
And like I said, he only talks about it for a couple pages.
Yeah.
His deployment to Iraq is only a page and a half long, and he gives this really poor, poverty-stricken Iraqi kid an eraser. And somehow that changes his life.
Right.
It's a moment, an epiphany.
Yeah.
And I thought right away, I'm like, wow, I wish that he had that much sympathy or even empathy for poor Americans.
Right.
Poor Americans, yeah.
I just wish he had more erasers.
Yeah. That was actually a nice scene. I actually liked that was because it almost felt like a scene, and that was a moment I was like, oh,
he almost felt like human.
Maybe a half a page.
I was like, that was actually kind of a really nice insight, and having known Sean for 15 years now, and Sean's been in war, and to know that Sean's interacted with kids in war and how kind of like important and powerful that can be. That was one part of the book. I was like, oh, okay, this is something that feels real. Why did it get a paragraph? And I don't know. That was one thing. Just knowing, having known Sean for this long, I was wondering like, why 4 years in the Marine during the wars? I mean, this was during wartime, and he was deployed. Why do we only get?
Sean,
I'll tell you why. It's because he was public affairs, and
yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
That's what. I didn't
know
what
his job was.
I'm sure he never left the wire, unless he went to like a school and it was like a kind of a photo op type of opportunity. That's what he did. But I was upset about that too. But I'm like, man, I shouldn't compare. I was in the infantry. We're actually kicking doors down and shooting at people every day, and people shooting at us. I'm like, I shouldn't, belittle his experience. He wore the uniform and he went to war. So I'm gonna say, okay, I'm not gonna do that.
Sure.
So if he did a whole chapter about it and how really laid it on thick, then I would have got pissed off. But he only did like a page and a half of
right.
Like, all right.
Well,
I'll let him.
Yeah, but Sean, what if he did this though? What if he came in? I didn't know that's what he did in the military, the public relations. Yeah. But what if he came at the beginning of the chapter and said, "I was in public relations for the Marines out there, and he was more if he was honest about it, because the way that it comes across now, talking to you and thinking about it, is he used that one moment that was probably like out there for a photo op,
right?
To create sympathy. And that actually makes me more mad than if he would have come out and said, well, I was in the Marines. I was in public relations, and I learned a lot, and I was there during the war, and these are the things we did as for public relations for Marines. But it feels like now he's cherry picking, and that actually kind of makes me feel a little more pissed off.
Well, there's that part in the book where he's saying about his Yale, his peers. A lot of these kids have never talked to someone who've been in combat in a current war.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not discounting that he was there.
Exactly. I wasn't.
You were not a combat vet, but you're presenting yourself like you were a combat vet.
Yeah. When he was, officially, right, Sean? He's officially a combat vet.
I'll be honest. I try to, like, I have problems now when people come up and are like, hey, I'm a veteran too, but I never got sent to war. So they're like apologetic to me about not fighting in a war. And I don't want anybody to feel bad about not fighting. So in my head, I'm just going to be like, you know what? If you wore the uniform, you're a veteran. I'm not going to say anything, disparage your service if it's not if I don't perceive it to be as hard as mine was, But so I'm fine with that.
But that's what he's presenting, though.
Right. I don't think it needs to be as hard as you know what I mean? I think a little bit of honesty would go a long way. Just like, okay, I was in PR and I did, because
he was there.
He was there. He was doing it.
He was
but to cherry pick that scene with a kid feels a lot different. I don't think there's, like you said, and I wouldn't know, but at the same time, like a little bit of honesty, and this, Sean, like we teach memoir. A little bit of honesty goes a really long way. Just saying, I was, I didn't see battle every day. I wasn't in battle every day. I was a PR guy.
Well,
and it doesn't mean you're any less.
Exactly. Exactly.
When you're writing memoir, you have to show your own faults, right? And he does not do that in this.
Oh, no. Everybody else has problems.
Yeah, he knows
his
everything.
faults are not his. His faults are because society has put him in this box or whatever. He was born this way. He never really shows that he has any character flaws, and that's bullshit, man. Everybody does.
Right.
And how to make your book better.
Not JD.
Okay, so showing your flaws would be advice if you were to so let's go Sean and Kase, because you guys are the memoirists in here. What advice would you give on on a rewrite of this for him to improve the book and make it better?
I'll let Kase go first. I got to think about that because I would just try to shake this guy by his collar and like find some humanity, man. This is just
I want to see that.
Well,
I do.
As writers, yes, but as readers, like Dorie and Brandon, it's like with memoir, the truth is when you see somebody else's vulnerability on the page, that makes you want to read that book.
Yeah.
Vulnerability and honesty and authenticity. The best memoirists show you voice, authenticity, and vulnerability within the first page of their memoir before you even flip it. So it's like less than 200 words. And I've taught classes all over about the first page of a memoir, and that memoir needs to show authenticity, vulnerability, and honesty. And voice, obviously, like Anthony Bourdain's, you pick up Kitchen Confidential, the first 150 words, you're like, oh, I want to read this book. Because he's like, if I get in trouble, I'm not calling a fellow writer. I'm calling a sous chef. I mean, he's like, in that book, he was not famous yet. And he's like, I have a lot at stake here because I'm telling the insides of this cooking or being a chef. That's why this memoir didn't work. Because he's not vulnerable.
Yes.
He's not vulnerable at all. And Sean said everybody else has, everything else is wrong. Society's wrong.
We
want to
see that. We want to see that vulnerability.
He has no vulnerability in this book. And again, goes back to the beginning of this is how the fuck did he get a contract for this?
Yale, baby.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, but you...
Shout out to Yale.
I'll let Sean answer that question.
When I tell people, I don't care what you're writing, if it's a Facebook post, a memoir, a novel, you should have in mind the rhetoric triangle: ethos, pathos, and logos. Mm-hmm. Ethos is your credibility. You have to have credibility. Logos is your statistics and facts, which he does have both of those things in a way, but he doesn't have the pathos.
He doesn't have the
pathos. Is your appeal to emotion, and that does mean showing your vulnerabilities. Yeah. It's the Robert Frost quote that I use all the time: if there's no tear for the writer, there's no tear for the reader. Yeah. So you have to do that, and he didn't do that. This book is boring to me.
It's boring because
not only there's no dialogue, there's no quotation marks.
There's no scene. There's no scenes.
But
there's no scene.
There's no scenes at all. It's all exposition.
Yeah, it's all exposition.
And I've read books like that. Well, Welcome to the Barnyard by I forget, it's Tristan somebody. And he could pull it off, but this book does not do that. And like you said, Kase, I have no idea how he got the deal.
I think Dorie's damn right. You go to Yale.
You scratch my back, I scratch
exactly.
yours.
And
but that still only goes so far. I mean, it struck a nerve with people.
It did, yeah. It sold books, that's for sure. New York
Times bestseller.
Yeah.
What were some of the reviews, Sean, on this book?
I just read the ones that are saying like this guy figured out why people are so apt to follow someone like Trump, because they're burnt out on the system. They want to burn the system down, and they're uneducated, so they're going to be easily manipulated. And so I don't know. I think some
that has nothing to do with craft or anything. So
I think high pollutant. Is that the right high pollutant? I'm trying to use the hillbilly terms of what they say. No one else does.
Highfalutin.
Highfalutin politicians.
Editor or critic at the New York Times thought he cracked the code.
Well,
oh my God, this guy's figured it out.
I think
but they're so removed from what the problem is. That they thought they solved it.
And Sean actually, in our messages back and forth, called it poverty porn.
Yeah.
And there's a thing going on with books right now that's called border porn, like with American Dirt, where it's like they want to they don't know what they're talking about, but they just want to show people from the East, people from New York City, New York, what was the salsa?
Get a rope.
Get a rope, the salsa. Pace pecana sauce. New York City. Anyways.
Which is like the worst pecan.
I know, it really is. But it was
I'm from
good
Texas.
Back then.
It sucks.
Yeah. But I think Sean nailed it with that message. It's from someone from back east who's never been to Appalachia, or somebody from back east who's never seen the border. They want their nice rosy glimpse into what that struggle is, but they're getting it in a way that feels like pornography. It's that poverty porn. It's like a what would you say? It's like a I don't know. It's like it gives them.
What are you like making poverty sexy?
Yeah. It's sexy for a reader.
Well,
it's enticing.
It's enticing.
Voyeurism.
That's a good word. It's voyeurism.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Voyeurism.
Yeah.
It's
I want to
voyeurism.
see a world that I don't understand, and I'm going to see it from a safe distance and just watch.
And
I'm going to be honest. I mean, I got caught up in that too. I was living very rural, and I noticed a lot of. I moved back where I grew up in Central Oregon, and I wrote an op-ed for the Oregonian. I was trying to make an argument about how we need to help our rural communities because, you go through a small town in Oregon now, and everything's pretty much closed down because some Walmart supercenter opened down the road and all the stores get closed. And the only thing that is open are these thrift stores, and they're selling their own memories. And where I was at, I had people, there was a huge economy in getting signed up with Social Security to take care of a grandparent or a disabled family member. That's how they'd make money. Lots of just hustling, selling drugs, pot and stuff. That's how they make money. But I knew 5 women who rented out their uteruses for families in China.
Right.
Yeah.
And they $50,000 to have a baby. And I try to equate that to the same thing, like me joining the military when I was a kid, because I didn't know any other way to, other than to risk my life to make a living.
Right.
And I wrote this in thinking that I'm trying to stand up and be a champion for the people in rural Oregon. And after that op-ed was published, the women who I knew that were surrogates were pissed at me.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Do you think you can talk for me?
Right.
You don't have a clue why I did this. And I was like, holy shit, you're right. I'm sorry. I did not know. And so I because I read some of the reviews from people who lived in Appalachia about JD Vance. And I'm like, oh, I get it, dude. I know, people are sharpshooting you from every corner now because you did this. And I wanted to back him, wanted to like him, but I don't know.
I think that's a great look at it.
Right.
It is. It's like, I mean, and I think honestly, it could come down to a little bit more just authenticity, like just like, he
needs more, like you said, he's vulnerable. He has to show his own flaws and weaknesses.
Right. Which he does not do once. It's always like, I'm good, man.
You know what?
I'm good.
The only time he showed it in a very small sense was one of the last chapters when he, his wife, Usha.
Yeah. Who's awesome.
I want to marry Usha.
I
Shit.
do too.
Let's be honest. He shows that anytime an argument popped up or she disagreed or somehow showed him disrespect for what he thought, he would run or he would argue because that's what he knew.
Sure.
And he's learning from that because the females in the book. Sorry, I'm like away from the microphone.
Yeah, no.
Sorry, man.
That was, you had to prove a point.
Well, Dorie and I were at Bear Lake last week together doing the exact same thing.
Oh, yeah. We were on floats drinking alcohol. We were having a great time.
Yeah.
She's
Hello?
like, don't
Where the hell was
I don't. You were probably in like Yellowstone or something.
I was in Florida.
Yeah.
But she showed him, you don't do that. You don't run away when things get hard.
And you don't get aggressive.
And because that's what his mother did.
Right.
And that was the only time he showed, I am flawed in this aspect.
Okay, so again, I don't know anything about this book. I don't know anything about anything in the timeline. So is he married when he writes this book? He already knows.
He's already married.
He's married. He's lived his life.
What Dorie's talking about is chapter 14. And that was the only other chapter that I wrote down a quote from it. And it's
what quote?
Nothing compares to the fear of becoming the monster in your closet. So he was talking about like, I'm becoming my mom, and I'm becoming this monster that I've always been afraid of and hated my entire life, and now that's me. Which I thought it was funny because I'm sorry, but this guy was a never Trumper.
Yeah,
he was talking about how he's American Hitler,
right?
And now he's his vice president. And I'm like, what? Are you not paying attention to your own words?
Well,
no, Sean.
Well, and that was
we've established that.
Yeah. Well, and there's two things with that. First off, monster in the closet. Only hillbillies say that. That's new to everybody else. Nobody's ever heard that phrase before. And
I didn't understand it at first.
I know. It's like a monster in the closet.
I get it.
What does that mean? Only a hillbilly would know that.
I honestly don't know that, so I'm not a hillbilly.
It's the kukui. And for us, it's the kukui in the closet.
Yeah, the kukui.
Monster Inc., dude. John Goodman.
It's Monster
Billy
Inc.
Crystal.
Yeah, it's like Monster Inc. been out for 20 years before this book came out. You know, I mean,
I effing love Monster Inc.
I know it's so good. The ride in Disney is really bad. But there's that, and if he would have really developed scene earlier on in the book where his mom, with the violence, with the anger, with the
In one scene,
Right.
you're totally right.
So-
Put me in a room with the mom being all
crazy, and if you then that chapter pays off. That chapter with his wife really pays off in the memoir in chapter 15 or 14. Because if he gives us that scene, those scenes of violence and anger or running or whatever it is in chapter 2 or 3. But they don't pay off when he's talking to his amazing wife, who's a Yale graduate, who's like...
He said, I want to marry Usha.
I know. She's like really impressive.
She's from India, too.
And she's from India, too. Yeah. So it's like, that would pay off really well if, like Sean said, if he established the ethos and the pathos in chapter 2, that ethos and pathos comes back to help him in chapter 15, where he's changed. But we don't see him in chapter 2 going off the rails. Like if he goes off the rails in chapter 2 and he isn't able to control his anger, and in chapter 14 with this wonderful woman, he's able to control his anger. That's a growth. That's that growth that you need in a memoir. You know, I'm a better person now. And this woman is making me, she makes him a better person. I believe that in him.
I do.
But that chapter doesn't pay off because he doesn't set it up in chapter 2. And it's like, I've always tell this with my students. I'm like, well, you know, because I teach novels now. And I'm like, you can't have a dad build an extra door in chapter 15 so the kid can like run away from home. That door needs to happen in chapter 2 when the dad's out of work and figuring things out. So he's just like tinkering around. All of a sudden the door's there in chapter 14 for the kid to run away. It's too easy to say, oh, my dad just in chapter 14, oh, my dad built a new door and I ran away, you know, but it works easy. It works if you build that door in chapter 2 because your dad's out of work and he's trying to do things around the house.
It's a gun on the mental. Chekhov's gun.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And those chapters would have worked.
Feel you finally finished the book?
Yeah, I finished it this morning.
I asked because I was unexpectedly, I finished it and I was angry. And I have to figure out why I was angry. I'm like, I gotta look at this. Then I'm gonna sit down and explore my feelings. I was off. How did you guys feel?
I was just, honestly, I was glad it was over.
Yeah.
I was glad it was done.
I'm glad.
I couldn't take him anymore, Sean. I couldn't do it.
Especially if you listen to him read it.
You guys listened to it. I listened to some of it too. And it was actually read by J.D. Vance.
Right, right. And that's why,
I couldn't take it.
When I
had to stop reading. I had to stop listening because of the word mama.
Mama, yeah.
That's only hillbillies. Only hillbillies call their grandparents mama and papa.
Right, yeah. And there's no other derivation of that across the world. Nobody calls your mama or papa. This is totally new.
It's all hillbilly.
Mama and papa are totally hillbilly.
Mama and papa
there's no
no
derivation of mama and papa across the world.
I want to talk about why I was angry. And it took me like a good hour to really sit down and explore why. And I think this story needs to be told. And it's my story. It really is my story, you know, being poor. And I'm like, you know, I went through a lot of shit to become who I am today. And I'm happy about it. And I want people to know about it. But I think the anger came from the fact that it was inauthentic. Yeah. And it just wasn't real. And I want this story to be told for real. And this was not it. I was upset.
I think this could be a good book. I mean, the guy actually went through some stuff.
He did.
He really did. Where he is now is really pretty remarkable. It really is. I mean, you can't take that from him in any way. He had to do the work. He had to go to the Marines. He had to probably get a great LSAT score. He probably was top of his class to go to Yale. I mean, the guy did everything. He really did
the work.
And you can't take that from, and he was never given much. I mean, his background doesn't give him that much, you know? And, you know,
there's no humanity.
There's just,
he has no humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Sean, I want to hear your story. I don't want to hear this dude's story.
I mean, the guy, I think the guy earned everything he had. There's no question.
Yeah.
He earned everything he has.
It wasn't handed to him.
No, not in any way, shape, or form. I mean, he had probably some things that probably would have kept him from doing anything.
Right.
His mom was pretty out of control, and you know, he never really had a father figure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, he probably could have been a pretty bad life.
Commentary
he did good.
From the outside, then the way you describe this, I'm trying to psychoanalyze. Why didn't he do that? You know, like why didn't he allow you in that book? And I'm wondering if he doesn't, because of his background, he's
because of his background,
he doesn't allow
he can't let down the
vulnerable.
walls.
Yeah,
you can't see inside
Yeah.
the truth. You don't ever say what's happening with your family to the outside world, and I feel like that's still instilled in him. Like,
but that would have made
you don't show everything.
It would have made a better book, but I think my simple answer is he's a politician.
And
I think that's a certain personality.
Even back then when he wrote it, which I don't know when that was.
He was a Yale lawyer graduate. I mean, it's like, you know, I think there's a certain person that's a politician, and that those people who want to ascend, they're going to give you what you want to hear and what you want to read, and that goes back to this
I can't say what I want to say.
Yeah, poverty porn, you know.
Sociopath.
He's sociopathic.
You think, really?
He talks about that a lot. Childless women are sociopaths. I'm not getting political, but he just doesn't have the humanity. It's a great story. I want to hear it.
What does the wife
He doesn't have the humanity.
Maybe she'll bring that out. We don't know.
Maybe she seems amazing. Like
I said, I want to marry Usha.
There are points in the book where you're like, his wife is really great. Like,
she's laying it down.
Yeah, she tells him like she's like, you can't do this, dude.
She's like, look, you dumbass.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is how
behind every great man.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a great woman.
There's a great woman.
Well, you can only say that. That's only hillbillies have that saying.
Oh, sorry. Only hillbillies can say that.
I know that we're kind of near the end, but I do have one question, a very serious question for you guys. What did you think after you finished the book and there was no furniture sex? You did not.
Right. Where did that come from, though? Where did it come from? Who started that's the thing.
Who started the rumor?
Yeah.
I've only heard about it, but I don't know what it's.
I want to know. I want to know.
I totally started that rumor. I was like,
Sean!
There was none.
I was disappointed.
I'm going to admit it right here. It's world exclusive.
Yeah. Well, there was actually no masturbation scene.
You know what this book really needs to be good?
Couch
needs
sex.
to fuck a couch.
Yeah.
That's right.
There are actually no masturbatory scenes.
None at all.
Couch,
there's
lazy boy, love seat.
Nothing in here that would make him look bad. And that's one of the problems.
That's the problem.
Well, we should probably spend some time on Fourth Wing and then figure that shit out.
That's my vulnerability.
I wish there was couch sex in this book.
I know.
It would have made it more interesting.
I mean, and we did pretty good not talking politics. That was pretty good. I'm proud of us.
I tried, man.
But
I'm proud of y'all. So in the notes here, Sean, you have, let's our recommendations. Sean, I'm assuming no one's recommending the book, but you can go ahead and
I will
declare.
I will recommend this book because the reason I will recommend this book is because this guy is running for vice president of the United States.
Yeah.
And that's why I was glad I read it. Yeah.
Who was taken away right in my whole life. I got to be 49 years of life before I saw our Supreme Court taking rights away, as opposed to figuring out how we're taking care of us as the people. Right. I mean, the problem with saying that, though, I'm like, all right, hey, I want you to read this book to know who this guy is who's running for vice president. The problem with that is a totally different dude,
Yeah,
I mean,
it feels that way.
Right.
Yeah, totally different dude. And so maybe the only thing you can get out of it is this guy has no moral compass. It's just fucking spinning right now.
And that's what I
know
wonder.
Mama tried her best and shit, but
social climbing.
It's social climbing. He's a politician. He's a politician.
Climbing. Yeah.
He's a politician.
Yeah.
Case? Recommend?
I'm glad I read the book. I'm glad for a lot of the reasons, like things that are coming out in the media right now, they're actually not true. People are going after him because they say, well, he says he's from Appalachia, but he's not. And the book actually, he doesn't ever really say he's from there. He says has a tie to there and they escaped. There's no couch fucking. And so, it's good to know. It's really interesting to know
It's the only reason I read this fucking book.
I know.
I wanted
Yeah.
So disappointed.
I know.
with a little dirty JD Vance with his glasses on. I'm like, all right, Ma. Hey, Ma. And then he goes in and starts That's why I read the book and it's not in there. And I'm fucking pissed.
Yep. But overall, I think
Dorie's losing it.
if you want to understand this person, read the book. It's I'm still mad about the book contract in the first place, but it's like
Explain that.
I don't know. I just read the book. It's interesting. It's a short read. It's super fast.
It's like 6 hours.
Yeah, it's 6 hour listen. That's not bad at all.
But I couldn't read a lot or listen to a lot at once. It just pissed me off.
Yeah.
It gross. I had to listen to something. I had a palate cleanser
Yeah.
after I listened to it for
What
so
was your
long.
palate cleanser?
I don't even want to tell.
It was like whatever comes out for her fourth week is what it was. It was
the Onyx. I don't
know.
Whatever.
It was some ridiculous.
The fifth wing.
It was podcast, really.
It was podcast.
Podcast about movies, horror movies.
Yeah.
That's my palate cleanser always.
Well, my goal was that Tessa Fontaine has a new book out. We've had her on the podcast before.
Nice.
Congrats,
Tessa.
Tessa. Yeah.
And it's like in the New York Times bestseller list. It's actually really good. It feels like Margaret Atwood. It's called the Red Grove. It's really, really good. And Tessa's
nice.
super cool.
And super smart.
And super smart. She's really, really good writer. And I bought that book and I wanted to listen to it on my road trip this weekend. And I was like, I got to get through this.
You sacrificed.
Yeah, I was like, my goal is to get through it so that I can listen to Tessa's book. And Tessa's book is really good. If you the Red Grove, it's really, really good.
The Red Grove.
Mm-hmm. It feels like our Margaret Atwood a lot. It's about this. Anyways, never mind. But at the same time, Tessa's awesome. Her memoir was freaking fantastic.
Okay.
The Electric Woman, because she was really authentic and amazing.
And she showed vulnerability.
So much vulnerability. And she just ripped herself apart in some places. And it was a really, really good book about her joining the last carnival that was going on in the United States. And she was a fire eater. She had to learn to eat.
This is real.
Yeah. And she was
we're
really,
reading this book.
We have that on,
so
we have that
good.
podcast.
We have that podcast. It's really, really good. So cheers to her. But at the same time, I'm glad I read the book. I'm just glad that I read the book. I mean, I'd rather have him. We're not talking politics, but I'd rather have him as the front runner to win than Trump. You know, I think this guy is smart.
I think we can
Dude,
help
I'd take
him.
Mitt
change it.
Romney at this point, man.
Oh, Romney. I'd love Romney, you know?
At this point, I would love Romney too.
But I mean, I think this guy is intelligent.
But at this point, Romney looks like a Democrat.
No, he really does.
Right.
He really,
He's
really
a real gem.
well, and he's being treated that way too. But I think this guy's intelligent.
He's milk toast. Right?
Yeah, I know. But anyways, I'd rather have him as the front runner for the Republican Party than Trump. You know, just because.
Dorie, would you recommend the book?
Well, because he's got an Indian wife with mixed race kids,
Yes.
and he's smart.
That's why I would recommend the book. Number one, like I said, Mamaw.
Mm-hmm.
That woman she is the North Star. She helped him get to where he is.
She's amazing.
I love her. And
I love her.
She is my mother. And I read it. I'm like, oh my! I cried reading the book, and I watched the movie after I read the book. I cried. It's my mom.
Yeah.
And it's a woman who has been through hell.
Yeah.
Directing let me show you the way. And just beating herself up just to get them to where they need to be.
So she
And
doesn't
Usha,
get the credit
number
in the
two.
book. She gets it in the movie.
She gets it in the movie.
Yeah. And she gets it in my heart.
And me too.
The only reason to read the book is because of Mama and Usha.
I agree.
And Usha is only in a small part towards the end, but
yeah, Mama was my grandma. Just like first heart attack at 41, first baby at 14.
yeah, I mean they've been through hell. They went through it. And they directed them.
I've written two.
Yes,
I've written
you
two.
Did. You did.
Why is it not a New York Times bestseller?
That's what
because he didn't go to Yale.
Because I didn't go to Yale. I went to Weber State University, Brandon, right?
Yeah.
That's a fine
It
establishment.
is a fine establishment.
Go Purple.
Hey, that's where
Bleed
where
purple.
that one basketball player from Oregon went.
Yeah, Damian Lillard. Woo!
Oh yeah, he did.
Weber State University.
Sean, he's plastered on everything.
Yeah.
Just so you know, up at Weber.
Oh my gosh,
it looks like Damian Lillard's university up there. It really does.
But Yale, Weber State, eat it.
Whatever.
JD Vance. I know. Weber State is like the cream of the crop.
Oh.
They don't know.
I mean, it's open enrollment, which means anybody can go, obviously. But it's a great it's a great school.
Go Weber. Bleed purple.
I mean, the nickname was Harrison High because
Harrison High. Our growing
the street that runs in front of it is Harrison, and it was basically just an extension of a high school.
Yeah. Well, I went to Portland State.
Yay, Portland State.
Yeah, basketball rivals.
What city is Portland State out of?
Portland.
It's Portland? Oh my gosh.
Shit.
I am a dumbass. He didn't know.
I didn't want to say it.
Well,
I didn't make the connection.
God bless you. Don't even look at me in the eyes.
I need you to sell yourself for a minute, Kase.
Yeah.
Anything going on? Because you have nothing going
Please,
on, right?
Kase, talk about yourself, buddy.
No, thank you.
You hate doing it.
Well, your job.
I don't want to connect the job.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Never mind then.
I will. This guy is bad.
Somebody's gonna find you.
This guy's amazing.
This guy's trying to keep bourbon, beer, and books a secret.
No, I just want to keep it separate. But you can buy the new book. It came out in May. Anybody can buy Castaway. They buy it. And they can buy it. It's already won an award,
which I will say
takes all the pressure off.
I was down shooting photos at an elementary school in Rose Park, and I thought of you, Kase. I was this is where the book takes place. How interesting. And I'm looking around. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. But for
a section of it,
the work stuff, October is coming really fast. And we have 102 events in cities across the state for the Utah Humanities Book Festival. I am done planning. It is over. It is in the books. I've got 177 authors lined up. It's going to 7.
How many?
177. There's 6 authors that are New York Times bestsellers this year.
Nice.
Like current.
Wow.
Not JD Vance though, right?
Not. Okay. He is. Well, yeah, but no.
Yeah, but
let's see. If we can get him on the podcast, let's do it.
I mean, come on.
Put the word out.
I'd have a chit chat with him any day.
I would too.
You know what? We should have called
his wife
just if you wanted to be here.
Yeah, we should have asked. You never know when you ask.
You never know.
Hey, we had
Wow, what's that?
We had Percy.
We had Percy.
We had Percy on.
Jack Carr. I mean, he's huge right now. He's huge, and he's doing the book festival as like a donation. So he's okay. Well, I'm going to end really soon, but I reached out to his agent and his publicist, and I said Park City would love to have Jack Carr, and he said that I said I only have $1,500. We're poor. That was my thing. Like, we're poor nonprofit, and his publicist said Jack will do it in Park City, but he wants you to buy $1,500 worth of his book about Beirut and give that to the Walter Reed Hospital in Ohio or Maryland as a donation. Wow. And I'm like, wow,
writers, man, because of this stuff.
Yeah, he's huge. I mean, he's huge, and he's doing it for $1,500, but he's not even taking the money. He's just like, I'm going to go to Park City, and I want you to donate this to the Veterans Hospital at Walter Reed.
Stories like that.
Yeah, and he was a Navy SEAL. He was a big time Navy SEAL. He was a good. And I watched his Netflix with what is it, Chris Pratt, and I was like,
he has a Netflix?
Yeah, he has. It's called Terminalist.
Oh.
And I read the book first, and I was like, why Chris Pratt? Because I can only think of Chris Pratt as Parks and Recreation. And I'm like, how can Parks and Recreation?
He's the new, he's Arnold Schwarzenegger's son-in-law. He's the new hunk, I guess.
I know, but I can only think of him as like Parks and Rec, and how can he be a Navy SEAL if he's the Parks and Rec guy? Anyways, but authors will do it, which is super super cool, and we're excited. And I'm going to extend, like Sean said, you can just ask. I'm going to extend an invitation to be on the podcast for Utah Humanities to Jack Carr, and he just might do it.
Cool.
Awesome.
But he's number 2 on the bestsellers list right now.
Oh man, I hope he does.
Yeah, I hope so too. Nice guy, great guy. That's a really cool thing to do.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sean, final thoughts. Take us out.
Well, I want to talk about. So I have a radio show on KMUN. You can find it on you can find it online, but it's here in Astoria. It's a small local place. And I do river riders, and because we live on the Columbia River. And I just interviewed Lydia Yuknovich. She's a big deal writer. Her memoir, Chronology of Water, was optioned to be a movie, and Kristen Stewart from the Sparkly Vampire fame. No one knows how you're going to get famous. She is an amazing actress.
She really is.
Very smart person. So she's doing her directorial debut on Lydia.
Nice. Yeah.
Chronology of Water.
And that's been a long time, right? That's been a long time in the making.
Yeah.
It takes forever.
It's shooting right now.
That's cool.
And I talked to Lydia, and we talked about that and writing and everything else. And then I'm still doing a documentary on trying to stop suicide in the veteran community in rural Oregon. And we drove all around the state of Oregon, and we kind of highlighted the beautiful places, and we talked to a lot of great veterans. I'm doing that too. And then, of course, I do this and some other stuff. So, so last words. Oh, Dorie, do you have anything that you're working on, or?
No. I'm just here supporting my writer friends, and I read them.
Dorie, do you want to pick next
the next book? That's a good idea, because I was halfway through that Bigfoot one, Sean.
I know. So I'm going to see Robert Pyle on Tuesday.
Oh.
So maybe we'll revisit that later. And
Let's
we can
revisit
actually
that.
have him on the podcast.
I would suggest Rama, but
No.
Arthur's. Oh, no.
You know what? Be quiet. Zip
Rama
it.
too?
I do have a book. I don't have the name or the title right now because I've been drinking Maker's Mark and
It's
yacht
really
rock
good,
beer.
though. That
It's
Maker
set
Mark
in
is really good.
Mexico, and it's a true story about a woman's sister who went missing and was murdered by her husband.
What's the name of the book?
I can't remember. I have to get my phone out.
Get
It's
it out.
not 2666, is it?
No, dude, it's not.
Get it out.
Maybe that's the one we should do.
No,
this is my
2666
phone.
is
I can't pull my phone
1,000
up.
words.
It's right here.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
1,000
But-
pages.
5 novels.
Yeah.
We'll post it in the Facebook group,
We'll
by the
post
way.
it in the Facebook
we do have a
group.
Facebook
So, Brandon, okay,
group.
last thoughts, Brandon. What do you think about this book?
Yes.
Just listening.
I think I think they should have called you for some advice.
I agree.
Obviously not. They probably wouldn't have sold anything.
And I,
Problem is the guy doesn't take advice. You can tell him.
Yeah. well, I hope that's, and see, you might be
And I
right.
finally finished the beer.
Dorie, you might be right as far as like, I mean, sociopath's a strong word, but if he doesn't, but politician.
Politician. He's a politician.
Where
I did say he was a sociopath, but the thing is, like, he loves his wife, and he does love this
He
country.
does.
You can
He
tell.
does.
I mean,
Yeah, he does.
Sure.
Yeah.
He's just
But he feels
misguided.
emotions. I
well,
just
it
don't know
feels
if
like he goes all in on what he's thinking at the time, and then but he does
Sure.
switch.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
he does move
He's a
around.
little bit
I
of a
guess.
flip flopper then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
I would rather him be on the front of the ticket. I really would. I would be fine with him being the front of the ticket. For I think
At
he
this point, yes.
it doesn't
He
I
doesn't
think
make it
cracking
nervous as
open
much.
the alternate dimension.
nice. Like he's smart, he's intelligent, he knows what he's doing.
Dimension.
If he won the election, I'd be like, okay, I'd be okay with that. You know?
So, Sean, to
I'm sweating.
close up here, I do want to say that I did read a book while I was in Florida that you might like. It was the journalist who interviewed the guy in Maine who was a hermit, the Maine hermit. And they discovered, and do you remember when this was news and he came out? Because he had walked into the woods in Maine and lived in the woods for 20-something years. And the way he survived was breaking into local cabins, and there was like a youth home, like a
hostel type place?
it's a place where like the scouts go and hang out or whatever, and they had this giant freezer and stuff.
And
that's where he got busted.
No.
But he lived out there through the winters in Maine for, because he was in his 40s. He left when he was in when he was 20 or something. And so it was a good 20, 25 years. I can't remember. And it was called like The Last Hermit or something in the woods in Maine. It's very short, great read. But the journalist lived in Montana, and he would fly out to meet with him when he put him in jail because when he'd sold all the stuff, and then they had to reintroduce him into society, and the psychology of him trying to figure out. He literally did not talk to a person for 25 years.
That's my dream.
He could hear it's your dream. He could hear the voices, and there were a couple. There's you find in the book there was an instance where he was discovered one time, and that there was like some hand motions, and they said we won't say anything, and they never did. Those people they never ratted him out, and nobody effing found him. No, and he was surrounded by like summer cabins and stuff, and nobody found him. And it's a phenomenal short read, but the journalist who goes and interviews him, it's interesting dynamic there, because the hermit was not necessarily a fan of this journalist. He did give him some info, but he didn't really like him very much. Like he didn't know how else to tell his story.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you sure you're not mixing that up with the Bigfoot book?
Totally not. The Bigfoot book is very scientific and it's very in depth.
I thought it was all right. The Bigfoot book.
That's that one.
Yeah.
And I thought that it was going to be more about a story about his wife dying of cancer, but it's totally scientific.
The science
kind of cool. I'm kind of cool. That sounds cool. If I can say one more thing. One more thing is that if anybody listens, and I'm not bringing work into this, but after a decade, we're bringing back the Utah Book Awards, which is really, really big.
I think you're bringing work into this.
I know, but if I've got a platform, let me
You
shine.
do have a platform.
You know, let me. So
well, it's about time, man. You're like the worst guy who talks about his own shit all the time. You know, you gotta talk.
That
about
didn't come
stuff.
out right, but okay, Sean.
I understand what you're saying, Sean.
We understand what you're saying.
We love you and support
Dude,
yourself.
I read your early stuff. It came out exactly how I wanted it.
You just literally said you're the worst guy that talks about his own shit all the time. That's what came out.
You never talk about your
I've been
shit.
drinking this Jim Beam Kentucky bourbon.
Oh yeah, Dorie and I.
It's the Appalachia in him.
Yeah,
coming
Dorie and I made a dent on this Maker's Mark. But the Utah Book Awards, after a decade, I'm bringing it back. It's a really big deal because at one point it was the most prestigious book awards in Utah. And so if you know anybody, it's open to everyone, published or traditionally published and self-published. More to come.
Kase Johnstun. Are you out of this race?
I cannot submit my own book.
But what if your friend can?
I can't. They cannot
Damn
submit
it.
I'm picking the judges, which makes it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's.
I can't.
In my heart, you win.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That would make it
You're
a
the
lot
winner of
easier to
my
win
heart.
if you pick the judges.
I know. Well, now what I'm
It's only if he goes to Yale.
only if I'm a Yaley. You don't know anybody from Yale?
Oh my God!
I don't
from
know
the
anyone
terrorist.
from
Dude.
Yale.
I
Like,
know.
what the hell?
I know. But they're
Yale's
the worst.
So far away.
They're the worst. They're like Yale.
I do want.
I know which fork and knife to use.
Right. Oh yeah.
Oh, well.
Well, they say that BYU with the Y is the Yale of the West.
Eat shit.
And guess what? And it fits the
No,
same
it's
kind of
not.
attitude.
Does
Well,
it really?
Yeah.
Yale is something.
BYU and Yale.
Sean,
I went to
had
BYU.
no idea.
The name of the book is "Stranger in the Woods: The Extraordinary Story of the Last True Hermit." In case you're interested.
Okay.
Stranger in
I'm
the
going to
Woods.
order
Yeah, look that
right
one.
now.
It's pretty
on,
interesting. On whatever you order
Stranger.
books from.
All right, close it out,
Yes.
Brandon.
Yep. That's it. Thanks so much for listening
Oh,
to
my
Bourbon,
gosh.
Beer, and Books. You can find us on, if you're listening to this podcast, you can find us on YouTube under the Banyan Collective right now, except for I think you did start a YouTube page, Sean, so maybe we'll get there at some point under Bourbon, Beer, and Books. Okay, maybe not.
Yeah, it's
Season 2, baby.
YouTube page.
Yep, find us. Well, we'll be for sure up at the Banyan Collective in the interim until the YouTube goes up. But thanks for listening to this podcast, and we'll see you next month. Oh, by the way, we do have a Facebook page or Facebook group,
Yes.
I should say.
Yeah.
Facebook group. Yep, group. It is a group, and we definitely encourage feedback and interaction. We want to hear from you. Sean's very good at keeping the group, alive.
Thank you, Sean.
Yes, and so we wanted to let's read together. Let's make this fun.
Yes.
Let's read
Yeah.
together.
Absolutely.
We need to share the burden, especially with this book.
Totally. So, please join us, Bourbon, Beer, and Books, and we'll see you next month on Bourbon, Beer, and Books. Have a great rest of your month.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Awesome.
Sweet.